Have you ever felt like everything in your life was falling apart all at once? Like no matter how hard you pray, no matter how much faith you have, things just keep getting worse. It feels like you're being crushed under the weight of your struggles, and you can't understand why. You've been faithful. You've done everything you thought was right. But still, the trials keep coming. Why? What if I told you that what you're facing right now is not an accident? What if I told you that God is allowing these difficulties for a reason? Because sometimes the storms in your life are not meant to destroy you. They're meant to test you. They're meant to refine you, to strengthen you, to shape you into the person God has called you to be. But here's the thing. Many people miss this. They think they're just unlucky. They think God has forgotten about them. They fail to see the signs that God is testing them. And that is exactly what the enemy wants. He wants you to believe that your pain has no purpose. He wants you to give up, to lose faith, to turn away from God in frustration. But what the enemy doesn't want you to realize is this. Your greatest trials often come right before your greatest breakthroughs. Your hardest moments are often the moments where God is working the most. The Bible is filled with stories of people who went through unimaginable tests. People who faced hardship after hardship, not because God had abandoned them, but because God was preparing them for something greater. Think about Job, a man who was tested beyond what most of us could even comprehend. He lost everything, his wealth, his health, his family. But through it all, he remained faithful. And in the end, God restored him beyond what he had before. What about Abraham? God asked him to do something unthinkable, to sacrifice his own son. It was a test of faith so intense that most people wouldn't have been able to endure it. But Abraham trusted God even when it didn't make sense. And because of his faith, he became the father of many nations. You see, when God tests you, it's not because he wants to see you suffer. It's because he wants to see if you will trust him no matter what. Because faith that is never tested is faith that can never be trusted. But here's the question. Are you recognizing the test, or are you letting the struggle consume you? Are you learning what God is trying to teach you, or are you resisting the process? Right now, you might be going through something that doesn't make sense. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe your relationships are falling apart. Maybe you feel like no matter how hard you try, nothing is working. And in the middle of it all, you're asking God, why? But what if instead of asking why, God, you started asking, what are you teaching me, God? Because every test has a purpose. Every trial is an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to trust, an opportunity to prove that your faith is real. And if you can hold on, if you can push through, if you can remain faithful even when things don't make sense, then you will see the reward on the other side. God doesn't test you to destroy you. He tests you to prepare you. Because where he is taking you requires a level of faith, a level of endurance, a level of trust that you can only develop in the fire. And the fire you are in right now is refining you. It is making you stronger. But you have to recognize it. You have to stop looking at your situation as if it's just bad luck. You have to stop believing the enemy's lies that God has forgotten about you. You have to start seeing the signs. Because when you can recognize that what you're facing is not punishment, but preparation, and you will have the strength to endure. And that is what God is calling you to do right now. He is calling you to trust him, even when it doesn't make sense. He is calling you to stand firm in faith, even when everything in you wants to give up. Because if you can do that, if you can remain faithful even in the test, then you will see the power of God move in your life like never before. Have you ever wondered why your trials seem so relentless? Why just when you think you've overcome one challenge, another one appears? It's like you're walking through a storm with no end in sight. You pray, you fast, you seek God, but instead of relief, the pressure only increases. You start to question, is God even listening? Why is this happening to me? What am I doing wrong? But what if I told you, this isn't about what you're doing wrong? What if I told you that your trials are actually a sign that you're doing something right? That the difficulties you're facing right now are not evidence of God's absence, but rather his presence. You see, God doesn't test those he has no purpose for. He doesn't refine those he isn't preparing for something greater. If you are being tested, it means there is something in you that God is trying to bring out. There is a strength, a wisdom, a faith that he is developing within you. But just like gold must go through fire to be purified, Your faith must go through trials to be proven. Think about Jesus. Even he was tested. Right after his baptism, before he even began his ministry, he was led into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. 40 days of hunger, 40 days of isolation, 40 days of relentless attack. Why? Because before you step into the fullness of your calling, you will always go through a season of testing. And right now, you might be in your wilderness season. Right now, the enemy might be whispering lies into your ear, telling you that you're alone, that you're forgotten, that you're not strong enough to make it through this. But let me remind you of something. The enemy does not attack people who have no purpose. If he is coming against you, it's because he sees what God is doing in your life. He sees your potential. He sees your calling. And he is terrified of what will happen if you step into it. But here's the good news. Your test is temporary. Your trial has an expiration date. And if you can endure this season, if you can hold on just a little longer, if you can keep your faith even when everything around you tells you to give up, then you will step into a breakthrough that is greater than anything you could have imagined. Because here's the truth. The enemy has no real power over you. He can try to distract you. He can try to discourage you. But he cannot stop the plan of God for your life. The only way he wins is if you give up. If you walk away from the process, if you let the weight of your trial make you quit, then you miss out on what God was preparing you for. So don't give up. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how tired you feel, don't let go of your faith. Now, because the very thing that is testing you right now is the thing that is preparing you for what's coming next. And what's coming next is greater than you can imagine. What if the very thing you're praying to escape is actually the thing God is using to prepare you? What if the trials you're facing aren't punishments, but preparations? Too often we see hardship as a sign that something is wrong. But what if your struggle is a sign that something is right? Look at the heroes of faith in the Bible. Every single one of them faced trials before stepping into their destiny. Joseph was thrown into a pit and sold as a slave before he became a ruler. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading God's people out of Egypt. David was hunted by Saul for years before he took the throne. And even Jesus himself, before he walked in his full authority, was tested in the wilderness. Do you see the pattern? Testing always comes before promotion. Before God elevates you, he prepares you. And before he prepares you, he tests you, not to harm you, but to strengthen you. Because what he has planned for you is too great for you to step into without first being refined. God doesn't just want to bless you. He wants to build you. Think about it. If God gave you everything you prayed for right now, would you be ready for it? If he opened the doors you've been asking him to open, would you be strong enough to walk through them? God's timing isn't about delay. It's about development. He is working behind the scenes, shaping you, molding you, preparing you for what's ahead. And the tests you're facing right now are part of that process. But here's the challenge. Will you trust him in the process? Will you still believe when the breakthrough hasn't come yet? Will you still be faithful when the road gets rough? Because faith isn't just believing when things are easy. Faith is trusting when things don't make sense. That's why James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Your test is producing something in you. It is making you stronger. It is developing a faith in you that cannot be shaken. But if you quit too soon, if you walk away in frustration, you may miss out on what God was trying to do in you. Because sometimes the breakthrough is just on the other side of the test. So don't give up. Don't let the weight of the trial make you doubt the goodness of God. If you are being tested, it means God is preparing you for something greater. Hold on. Keep praying. Keep trusting. Because what's coming next will be worth every moment of struggle. Have you ever felt like God was silent in the middle of your struggle? Like you're praying. You're crying out. You're doing everything you know how to do, but heaven seems quiet. It's one of the hardest tests of faith. To trust God when you don't hear his voice, to believe in his plan when you can't see his hand. But listen carefully. God's silence is not his absence. Just because he's quiet doesn't mean he's not working. Sometimes the teacher is silent during the test. Not because he's left the room, but because he's watching to see what you've learned. And in the same way, God allows seasons of testing to see if your faith will remain even when the answer doesn't come immediately. Think about Job. He was a righteous man, faithful to God, and yet he faced loss after loss. His wealth, his health, his family, all gone in an instant. And to make matters worse, it seemed like God was silent. Job didn't understand why he was suffering. He questioned, he wrestled, he cried out, but God did not respond right away. And yet Job remained faithful. He refused to curse God. He refused to give up. And in the end, God restored him, blessing him even more than before. Could it be that your test is setting you up for a testimony? Could it be that your struggle right now is the foundation for something greater ahead? What if the silence you're feeling isn't God's absence, but His preparation? We live in a world that craves instant results. We want answers now, solutions immediately, breakthroughs without the waiting. But God's timing isn't like ours. He is never late, but He is also never rushed. Because what He is building in you takes time. Deep faith is not built in moments of ease, but in moments of testing. Isaiah 41 says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." There is power in the waiting. There is strength being developed in the silence. But the question is, will you trust Him in the quiet? Will you keep believing even when you don't see the answer yet? When the enemy tries to whisper that God has abandoned you, remind yourself of His promises. He said He will never leave you nor forsake you. When doubt creeps in, declare His word over your life. Because if God is allowing you to go through a season of testing, it means there is something valuable on the other side. The greatest miracles often come after the greatest tests. So don't let frustration make you walk away too soon. Hold on, stay faithful. Because God's silence is not the end of the story. It's just a chapter in the testimony He is writing for you. What if the trial you're facing right now isn't meant to break you, but to make you? What if the storm isn't a punishment, but a preparation? Too often we assume that hardship means God is against us, that when life gets difficult, it's because we've done something wrong. But what if the truth is that your struggle is not a sign of God's rejection, but a sign of His refining? God never tests without a purpose. He never allows pain without a plan. And when you're going through a season of trials, it's not because God is cruel. It's because He's crafting something greater in you. He is molding you, shaping you, strengthening you for the calling He has ahead. Look at Joseph. He was given a dream from God, a vision of greatness, of purpose, of leadership. But before the dream became reality, Joseph went through betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and years in prison. If anyone had a reason to give up, it was Joseph. If anyone had a reason to believe that God had abandoned him, it was Joseph. But through it all, he remained faithful. What if Joseph had given up in the prison? What if he had stopped believing in God's promise? He would have never stepped into his destiny as the ruler of Egypt, the one who saved his family, the one who fulfilled the very dream God gave him. Could it be that you are in your Joseph season right now? That God has given you a promise, but before you see the fulfillment, you have to go through the process. Every trial, every setback, every hardship, it's not wasted. God is using it. He is working in the waiting. James 1:2-4 says, "I consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Your trial is producing something in you. It's not just pain, it's preparation. It's not just suffering, it's shaping. Because the person you are today cannot handle the blessing God has for you tomorrow. You need endurance, you need character, you need strength. So God is allowing the test to prepare you for what's ahead. Don't fight the process. Trust it. Don't run from the refining, embrace it. Because if you let God finish what He started, you'll come out stronger, wiser, and ready for the purpose He has for you. So don't let the fire make you give up. Let it make you greater. Let it make you unshakable. Because when the test is over, the blessing will be worth it. Have you ever wondered why some seasons of your life seem harder than others? Why everything feels like a struggle, as if the weight of the world is pressing down on you? It's in these moments when the fire gets hotter that God is doing His greatest work in you. But if you're not careful, you might mistake God's refining for His absence. You might believe he's left you, when in reality he's drawing you closer than ever before. God's tests are not to destroy you. They are to develop you. When he wants to use someone greatly, he first allows them to be tested deeply. Think about it. Every person God used in a mighty way went through intense trials before their breakthrough. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading Israel out of Egypt. It is all. David was anointed king, but then spent years running for his life before he ever sat on the throne. Even Jesus was led into the wilderness to be tested before beginning his ministry. So if you feel like you're in the fire right now, don't be discouraged. You are not forgotten. You are being refined. You are being refined. God is stripping away everything that is holding you back. He is pruning you, shaping you, molding you into the person he created you to be. The fire isn't meant to burn you. It's meant to purify you. 1 Peter 1:7 says, "These trials will show that your faith is genuine. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold. Though your faith is far more precious than mere gold, God is proving your faith. He is strengthening you so that when the real battle comes, you will not break. But here's the challenge. Will you trust him through the test? Will you believe that even when you don't see him, he is still working? The enemy wants you to believe that the test is a punishment, but God wants you to see that it's a promotion. Every struggle, every hardship, every trial is not setting you back. It's setting you up for something greater. The problem is most people quit before they see the breakthrough. They walk away when the fire gets too hot. They pray for God to take them out of the trial, not realizing that the trial is what will prepare them for the blessing. What if Joseph had lost faith in the prison? What if David had given up in the wilderness? What if Jesus had walked away from the cross? The pain you're feeling now will not last forever, but the strength it produces in you will. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to stand firm, to trust, to believe that God's plan is still at work in your life. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are being prepared for something greater. Hold on. The fire is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of something powerful. What if the very thing you're asking God to remove is the very thing he's using to build you? What if the pain, the hardship, the struggle is not a sign of God's absence, but of his presence? You see, when God allows a test in your life, he is not trying to destroy you. He is trying to reveal something in you, something that needs to be strengthened, something that needs to be refined. But here's the real test. Will you trust him even when you don't understand? Will you keep walking when the road ahead is dark? Will you believe in his goodness even when life doesn't feel good? These are the moments that define your faith. Not when everything is easy, but when everything is uncertain. Think about Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his family, his health. Yet in the middle of his suffering, he refused to curse God. Instead, he said, "Although he slay me, yet will I trust him." Job 13:15. That kind of faith shakes the kingdom of darkness. That kind of faith moves the heart of God. The enemy wants to break you in the test. God wants to build you in it. The devil whispers, "Give up, it's too hard." But God says, "Keep going, you're almost there." The enemy lies and says, "God has forgotten you." But God's word says, "He'll never leave you nor forsake you." Every trial you face is an opportunity for God to show his power in your life. It's a setup for a testimony. But will you endure? Will you stay the course, even when everything in you wants to quit? Because right on the other side of this test is a breakthrough that will change your life. The enemy doesn't attack what isn't a threat. If you're going through trials, it's because there's something powerful inside of you. God is calling you to something greater. He is sharpening you. He is preparing you for a victory you can't even see yet. So don't stop now. Don't let the fire intimidate you. God is using it to refine you, to strengthen you, to prepare you for something greater than you ever imagined. This test is not your end. It's the proving ground for your next level. Stand firm. Keep the faith. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. What if the reason you're being tested is because you're on the verge of something great? What if the trial you're in right now is not meant to break you, but to prepare you? You see, God never wastes pain. He never allows a test without a purpose. But the question is, can you endure? There's a moment in every believer's life when faith is tested, when obedience is required without explanation. Maybe you're feeling that right now. Maybe you're standing at the edge of your Red Sea, wondering how you're going to move forward. But let me tell you something, God already has a way through. Think about Abraham. God told him to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, the son of the promise. It didn't make sense. Why would God ask for something he had given? Why would he test Abraham like that? But Abraham obeyed. And just as he raised the knife, God provided a ram in the thicket. The test wasn't about Isaac, it was about Abraham's faith. Would he trust God even when the request seemed impossible? Would he obey even when he didn't understand? And because he did, God blessed him beyond measure. Now, what about you? Maybe God is asking you to let go of something you don't want to release. Maybe he's testing your trust, stretching your faith. And in this moment, you have a choice. Will you cling to your understanding or will you trust his plan? You see, the test isn't about what you're losing. It's about what God is positioning you to gain. But so many people quit before the breakthrough. They give up in the middle of the storm, not realizing that clear skies are just ahead. If you could see what God is doing behind the scenes, you wouldn't be afraid. If you could see the doors he's opening, the blessings he's preparing, you would walk through this season with confidence. But faith doesn't require sight. Faith is believing before you see. It's trusting when you don't understand. This is your moment of decision. Will you surrender to fear or will you stand in faith? Will you allow the test to shape you or will you let it defeat you? Because the truth is, what's ahead of you is greater than what's behind you. God is calling you higher. But before promotion comes preparation. Before blessing comes testing. So hold on. Don't give up now. The test is temporary, but the blessing is eternal. And when you come out of this, you won't just be stronger, you'll be unstoppable. Have you ever felt like God is silent during your toughest battles? Like no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you cry out, it feels like heaven is quiet? But what if I told you that God's silence is not his absence? What if I told you that in the silence he's working, he's watching, and he's testing you in ways you cannot yet understand? The silence of God is one of the greatest tests of faith. When the answers don't come immediately, when the breakthrough feels delayed, when the storm keeps raging, this is when your faith is truly refined. It's easy to trust God when everything is going well, but when the pressure is on, when life feels uncertain, that's when your faith is proven. Think about Job. A man who loved God, a man who was faithful, and yet in a single moment he lost everything. His family, his wealth, his health. And what made his test even harder? God was silent. But Job didn't curse God. He didn't turn away. He stayed firm in his faith, even when his world was falling apart. And because of his endurance, God restored everything Job lost, twice as much. Now, let me ask you something. How do you handle God's silence? Do you start doubting him? Do you allow fear and frustration to take over? Or do you stand firm knowing that he is faithful even when you can't hear him? God is testing you to see if you trust him beyond the blessing. Will you trust him when the miracle doesn't happen right away? Will you trust him when the doors seem closed? Because faith isn't about seeing. It's about believing before the evidence appears. Sometimes the silence of God is actually his greatest work in your life. Think about a teacher during a test. The teacher doesn't talk when the students are being examined. They remain silent, watching to see how the students handle what they've learned. It's the same with God. Maybe right now you feel like you're in a spiritual test. Maybe it feels like God has stepped back, like he's not responding. But could it be that he's watching to see if you'll remain faithful? Could it be that he's waiting to see if you'll hold on to his promises even when nothing makes sense? Don't mistake his silence for abandonment. God has never left you, not for a single moment. In fact, he is closer than ever. He is working behind the scenes, preparing something greater than you can imagine. Your breakthrough is coming, but first, you have to endure the test. The silence of God is where champions of faith are made. It's where warriors are strengthened. It's where your faith goes from ordinary to extraordinary. So don't give up. Don't walk away. Don't let doubt win. Because when the silence ends, the glory begins. And when God finally speaks, he will restore, he will redeem, and he will reward those who stood firm. You've made it through the test. You walked through the fire, endured the silence, and pressed forward when everything inside of you wanted to quit. But now comes the moment you've been waiting for. Now comes the reward for your endurance. Because here's what you need to understand. God never tests you to break you. He tests you to bless you. Every test has a purpose. Every struggle has a reason. And every pain you've endured is leading to something greater. But here's the key. You must pass the test. You must hold on when it's difficult. You must believe when everything looks impossible. You must keep walking when you feel like sitting down. Think about Abraham. God told him to sacrifice his son, Isaac, the very child of promise. It made no sense. How could God ask for something so precious, something that was supposed to be a blessing? But Abraham didn't argue. He didn't complain. He obeyed. And right at the moment when the test reached its peak, God provided a ram in the thicket. The sacrifice was never meant to be Isaac. It was meant to be Abraham's faith. God is testing you the same way. Will you trust him even when you don't understand? Will you obey him even when it's uncomfortable? Because if you pass the test, the blessing is already waiting. The enemy wants you to give up right before the breakthrough. He wants you to quit before you see the promise. Because he knows something you don't. He knows how close you are. Right before God opens the floodgates of blessing, the enemy increases the pressure. Right before the door swings wide, the enemy whispers that it's locked. But the devil is a liar. This is not the time to quit. This is the time to push through. If you're feeling tested, if you're feeling stretched, if you're feeling like you're at the end of yourself, this is your moment of breakthrough. Because here's the truth. God's greatest blessings come after the greatest battles. If you can endure, if you can trust, if you can hold on to faith, you will see the reward. You will see restoration. You will see his hand move in ways you never imagined. Remember Joseph? Sold into slavery, thrown into prison, forgotten by men, but not forgotten by God. God was testing him, preparing him, shaping him. And in one moment, Joseph went from the prison to the palace. Your palace moment is coming. Your restoration is closer than you think. But first, you must pass the test. So I challenge you. Stand firm. Stand in faith, even when the pressure is on. Stand in obedience, even when it's difficult. Because the moment you pass the test, heaven moves. The moment you endure, God shifts things in your favor. The testing will not last forever, but the reward of faithfulness will. Hold on, trust. Keep going. Your victory is already written.